We don't need Jay-Z or Beyonce. We don't need Lady Gaga. All we need is great ideas to make America great again. That's all we need.
I tell you what, Donald, here's a great idea. We're going to talk badly about you behind your back. All the way from Worcester University in the Birmingham, the Politics Podcast for The Voice. I'm Duncan Cushnan. On my right, we have senior political and other correspondent Samuel Seeney.
Hi, everybody.
On his right, we have senior features editor Sean Bowden.
Happy to be here, Duncan.
And on his right, we have an American.
Yay.
Yay!
Can you pronounce your name for me?
Holiday.
Holiday.
Yeah.
And then on the phone, all the way from Aberystwyth, we have Daniel Mooney.
You know what?
Right. Sam, I feel you're really going to want to kick this one off.
I am, because I just want to start by saying I told everyone so.
You did.
I called this one. I called Brexit. If I'd have put a fiver on those two and Leicester to win the Premier League, I'd have £15 million right now. So I should become a bettor, or at least go into the stock market. So,
I tell you what. Obviously, we got sheets of data here. Should we just first go around, pretty much ask everyone's initial reaction to this when they woke up on Wednesday morning and thought and saw the news? What did they think? Now, Halliday, I want to start with you as our resident American here.
I mean, we already kind of talked about it a little bit, but I just shocked. I wasn't expecting it at all. I didn't really take him seriously. I didn't really take his supporters seriously. I mean, I knew it was like a possibility and that they were there, but I never imagined him. I mean, which maybe I should have after Brexit, because it was just the same situation where all the polls were saying he's gonna win. I mean, Hillary's gonna win. You know, all the states, Florida.
It was identical odds.
Yeah, seriously, and yeah, like the exact same thing happened pretty much.
I mean, Dan, as an international politics student, what was your reaction and your take? I don't know whether in your classes you cover anything like this, but from your point of view, was this something that you expected to happen?
Yeah, we actually thought it would happen. We hoped it didn't, but we pretty much nailed it was going to happen.
And so when you woke up, or did you, Dan? No, you didn't stay up for it. I'm sure of that. So what did you do when you saw the news?
Well, I might have stayed up a little bit for it, a lot. But when we heard the news coming in, we realised that once Florida had gone to Trump, that's when we sort of realised that it's going to happen. Trump is going to win this presidency.
And Sean, your reaction?
I'm going to be honest. I didn't see it coming. I was watching, listening to the past podcast we did, the other one we did, and I said these words. I'm going to quote myself to it. It would take a miracle for Trump to win, and I don't know what miracle has happened, but Trump is the president of the United States.
Stay tuned.
President-elect.
President-elect. I apologise. He will be president. I stayed up to watch it, and I'm just going to echo what these guys said. It was very Brexit-feely. You know, I was watching it, and at the beginning they were very much like, this is Clinton's, she's going to win, and then slowly it kind of dawned on the newscasters, who I would say were in a state of shock themselves, when Trump was just taking every single state that he needed. Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked. I'm not unhappy. I'll be honest. I don't like Clinton, but yeah, we can talk about it. I'm sort of don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but it's interesting.
Sam?
Well, I think the purpose of us gathering here today is to give a little bit of insight as to the motives behind why Trump is now president-elect, rather than say, ooh, I like the idea or I don't. I mean, my personal view is it's probably better for us in terms of our Brexit hopes, because he's very anti-trade deal.
But I mean, also what could be good is the fact, obviously, Putin. He's a. Hang on, I've got it on. I've got it up here. Putin said, you know, he's looking forward to a constructive dialogue between Moscow and Washington, and the interests of the people of the world. And I think perhaps it's a good thing, because if it's going to bring Russia and America closer together.
Well, did you know that the Russians actually had an approval rating poll, which sadly I haven't got the statistics in front of us at the minute, but Trump was overwhelmingly more popular in Russia than Clinton was. So, in a weird dichotomy, it's probably better that Trump has been elected than Clinton, because Clinton would have represented that like continuation of the Obama administration that had been very adversarial towards Russia and almost like poking it with a stick.
Though, well, Dan, I'm sure this must be something you must have covered, Russian-American relations. But I know many people were comparing Trump to Reagan, and yet that was a very tense time between America and Russia. Do you think that's going to mirror this? The Trump administration will mirror that, or do you reckon it will actually usher in a golden age between relations of the two?
Well, Hillary Clinton was the face of the Reset program back in 2008, and that, as we can see how well that went with America and Russia, she's kind of got quite a lot of a bad press back there. Trump, on the other hand, is a lot more isolationist, I'm going to say. We're not too sure what his foreign policy is going to be, really. Whether he's going to be traditional or trying to move out. So we could see a more pro-Russian America. So I think that's why the Russians are very happy. I know that when he was elected, the Russian Duma had a big round of applause for him. So,
but then, I mean, also as people have noted in his speeches of his acceptance, especially over the past month and the past few weeks, he's what he's been saying for his policies. I'm not going to say he's withdrawn from the radical esqueness, but he's definitely reined them in. Do you think that's an effect that they actually realise they might win, and that he's going to rein in these policies, or do you think that was just for those speeches and he's actually going to go as hard in as he goes? Now, Sam, you're shaking your head.
Because he's a businessman, what he knows is how to get attention. And ultimately, at the end of the day, all those sensationalist remarks, I don't think he meant them. I think they were one of his many ploys that he's used in order to get media attention and almost add credibility to his campaign in a weird kind of unconventional way. Like he used to label, I said this in the last podcast, didn't I? That he used marketing names or brands to diminish 17 other Republican nominees or potential nominees. Lion Ted Cruz, Little Marco...
Crooked Hillary.
Well, that's what he used with Hillary, yeah. Little Marco Rubio. He didn't have to do much for Jeb Bush. Because, but it was incredible that he almost systematically targeted his biggest threats down to the smallest. A lot of people think he's an idiot, but he clearly isn't.
It's interesting saying about what he's promised. Already he's taken off his website the one about not letting Muslims into the country. So already he's in a way he's backing away from that one. It was very effective to win the election, but now he has to kind of do the things he said he's done, and that's going to be difficult for him. Some of them he has to do, like he has to in some way improve the border with Mexico. Because that was one of his massive ones, build the wall. And if we remember how Obama, for most of his tenure, was dogged with the thing that he didn't close Guantanamo Bay. That was a thing he promised, and he didn't do it, and it did hurt him. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how much they can rein him in, or how much he has to do to keep that support that he obviously has now.
I mean, I was about to ask you to talk, but you're coming into it.
In terms of foreign policy, I think he's kind of released a 100-day plan on kind of what he wants to do, and he said he wants to introduce a 45% tariff on China and 35% on Mexico, which would cause a recession in those countries, and then they would...
I want to keep the powder dry on that, because this is going to come into my analysis of what he's actually planning to do and why he's planning to do it, but carry on.
Yeah, I mean, and also in terms of building a wall, I mean, Mexico has, clearly stated that they're not going to be funding that or helping in any way, and it's going to cost something like $20 billion.
Yeah, I think they were saying it's going to cost a minimum of $24 billion.
Yeah.
And but I mean, strangely enough, one thing I was looking at, on the morning, the articles were saying all the American markets or some of the markets have taken a hit. But what surprised me is the fact that whilst they took a small hit, it was a very small one. But when we went Brexit, I know people have said that the pound was overvalued, but there was this huge, I don't want to say collapse, but this huge devaluation, and yet that hasn't really reflected itself in the dollar.
Well, but that's not because of our vote for Brexit. That's because our currency over here, as I've said many a time, has been grossly overvalued to the point of economic stiflation for us for the past 30 to 40 years. That was more a realigning to what it should really be. The trading at £1 equals $1.25, or roughly about that. There was no way our economy was robust enough to be trading at £1 equals $1.50. And as we've seen, if you look at the FTSE 100, it's now actually trading at its highest level since the devaluation, which is showing that we've got economic growth rather than decline. It's the same in the FTSE 250, I believe. It's trading higher than it was pre-Brexit. So,
and well, it's one of those. Do you think perhaps the markets might actually trade higher in America with Trump coming in, or when Trump becomes president? Because whether his business acumen might reinforce their belief and confidence.
It's hard. And political. The thing we've learned this year is that big political changes happen, and the markets do drop and they do come up, and they do tend to level off. I don't know. I think I don't know if you talked about this, but the Mexican peso drops dramatically after the Trump. They said that Trump was going to win, so I don't know how that's going to be coming through. But I don't know. I don't think there'll be a massive drop, because we just don't know what he wants to do, because he's been very light on policy. He's been very light on that stuff. So yeah.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but Dan, political landscapes and economic markets are heavily intertwined. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be a huge business analyst, but do you think in any way, his election will what do you think would be the straight off benefits as a Trump president for America?
Well, I know that Dow Jones has gone up a little bit since Trump came in. It's kind of hard because investors are going to see a multi-billionaire businessman, so they're not going to be as worried about their investments as Brexit was, which was like a leap into the unknown. I know that our pound's done a lot better now since he's come in for some reason. Our exchange rates are a lot better.
It's interesting that the what's it called, Wall Street was banking 100% banking on a Clinton win, and they didn't even start planning for the potential eventuality that Trump would become
that was almost
president.
a cock up our government made. The fact that our government said, "Oh no, we've not made any plans for a Brexit."
It just shows how out of touch the establishment in these countries is.
Yeah. Do you think the American establishment's out of touch?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you just watch any of the major news channels, I mean, there was no possibility of a Trump win. That's where you're getting all your information. So that's why it was shocking to a lot of people. And I think a lot of people feel very disconnected from each other in terms of Trump supporters and more.
But I mean, well, with obviously the media, I mean, throughout the entire campaign, there was a huge media bias towards Clinton. And yet, obviously, Trump's come out with an overwhelming victory. Do you think that the media bias contributed to that? The fact that people couldn't actually get, I don't want to say reliable information on Trump, but any information that wasn't critical from him of your traditional press?
I think it just helped him have this narrative of being the outsider. It just helped him have this narrative of, these are the people who have run the show for this long. I am the change candidate. And I think it's interesting just to look at the polling. The polling especially was so off about this, just like it was at the 2015 general election over here, just like it was at the Brexit vote. These polling always skews towards the establishment, and once again, it's kind of got itself a bloody nose.
I've got to make the point following that the establishment, we've got to realise now in the Western world that the establishment is not old white men anymore.
No.
That's not the case. That's 30, 40 years out of date. The establishment now is these progressive, bordering left-wing politicians.
It is in Congress and Senate and House of Representatives.
It is now, but you've got to look at the media. You've got to look at people in positions of power. The judicial system.
It is still like that if you look at that.
No, but I think they subscribe to a more kind of left-wing viewpoint than previously, which is why, with especially these news outlets, they basically fooled people into thinking that there was no way that Trump was going to make this remarkable election his. It's almost as if they've scared people into thinking that they can't have a different opinion. and that's led to this kind of shy conservative viewpoint where they don't feel they can express themselves for fear of being one label or another. It's this is really a political rebellion on an almost, I'm going to say, seismic scale.
But I think that's more in terms of the media. I mean, if you look at Congress, the reason why Obama wasn't able to, he had a lot of trouble getting things done and had to use executive orders is because Congress, did not let him do anything. They have.
Wasn't it?
Well, just one thing I wanted to ask. Well, Dan mainly before he has to regretfully has to head off. I mean, Dan, what would your predictions be? For the transfer of power over the next couple of months in Trump's first 100 days? Do you have any thoughts looking in onto that?
The transfer of power will go smoothly. I mean, it's America. It's not like a third world state. He's already met with Obama. Apparently, the talks went excellent. So I think we can be quite safe there. The first 100 days, I'm actually going to say that it's going to be quite mundane. I think Trump's going to be kept on a leash by the Republican Party establishment, especially as they now hold all the major governorships, Senate seats and representative seats. So I think he's going to kind of really now lower the rhetoric. As Sean said earlier, he's got rid of the anti-Muslim parts of his website campaign. So I think he might become more of a rubber duck, like a stamper, rather than an actor.
Yeah, anyway, thank you for that, and Dan, and thank you for joining us again. I hope did you enjoy your time here?
He's all right. I mean, it's nice to have Brummy voices rather than Welsh ones.
And do you have any other thoughts on Trump or the US elections, just generally? I mean, over how the campaign was fought or anything like that before you leave us?
Well, it was a very horrible, dirty campaign from both sides. I mean, they're both not very nice people. Hillary's done some very disgusting things, and Trump has said some very disgusting things. And hopefully, for America's sake, they can now move on and start focusing on what needs to matter, and that is bringing the nation back together.
Cool, and I thank you, Dan, and hopefully we might have you on again here soon, and we'll speak to you soon. But now we need to get on to the next topic. I can see Sam scribbling. Okay, cheers, Dan. Sam, go right ahead.
Right, okay, so now we're going to get into the analysis of what's gone down. So, as we talked in the last podcast about these all-important swing states of Florida, Maine, Nebraska, Nevada, North Carolina, and Ohio, the only one that Hillary Clinton actually clinched was Nevada.
She got most votes, though. She got the popular vote. It was the Electoral College that...
Yes,
yeah.
Which is the same scenario that happened in 1960 when you compare the votes cast for Richard Nixon and the votes cast for John F. Kennedy. Kennedy lost the popular vote to Nixon, but he still managed to win the presidency. So, I mean, I guess the way to explain it to people listening is California has the biggest population, or one of the biggest population concentrations in the United States. If Clinton wins every vote in California, that's great. She's got the state. However, that only means she gets the 55 electoral votes from California. She doesn't get any more. She doesn't get any less. So in effect, any vote over the winning threshold for that state is wasted. So when they say, oh, Trump lost the popular vote, yes, he did. But really, the American electoral system doesn't cater for that, and it's more representative of the federal system. And there's more of an emphasis on the federal system than, number of votes, whereas over here it's strictly first past the post. You need 50% of all votes cast plus one to win. I think for America, because it's so complex, and you've got the states and then you've got everybody else, the population as well as the states, they need to have a system in place in order to cater towards that two-tier system. But obviously there is the argument that should he really be president if he lost the popular vote?
It's interesting. It's a similar argument that we have in Britain. You talked about the first past the post system, but just 2015 general election, UKIP got for about, I think it was about 3.9 million votes, and they only got like one seat. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting thing with this as well. It's similar, it's obviously a bit different, but it's the case of, even though pretty much Trump got those swing states, Hillary Clinton, as you said, got more of the popular vote. More people ticked Hillary Clinton across the country than they did for Donald Trump. And yeah, it's a discussion we've always had about how we do these elections, how to make it fair. It's a tough thing to do.
It is, but it's also interesting to point out that the Democrats really have the advantage in terms of the electoral vote. Because, I mean, California's pretty much always Democrat. That's got 55 votes. That's one of the biggest prizes on the board. Florida, that's a swing state. That's 29. And there's also New York, isn't there? That's another 29. And that's pretty much always Democrat. So in terms of getting over the line, they have the advantage over the Republicans who typically, I mean, their only big prize, I believe, is Texas, which is 38, which is always red.
Yeah, so it's very much tougher because which one was it? Sorry. California is always going to be Democrat. It's always been Democrat, and it's the biggest state. It's a lot tougher for a Republican candidate to get through. And if you just look at the list I'm looking at, every single state that they said that Trump needed to win, he needed to win Florida. And it was close in Florida, right down to the wire. He needed to win Ohio. He needed to win North Carolina. And he did, and he won those ones. Wisconsin, he won. Pennsylvania, which is a huge one. If you look at the one swing state that Hillary Clinton actually won, which was Nevada, only 6 electoral votes. So it's a swing state, but it's not the most important swing state. The more important ones are Florida, are Ohio. Those the bigger
and
ones.
Ohio has voted Democrat, I think, since 2004. This is the first time since then.
I believe Ohio always votes for the president. So when Barack Obama came in, they voted Democrat. When Bush was in, they voted Republican. So it seems Ohio is a very good indicator of where the country's heading, almost.
But let's not forget the point that's, I think, crucial for this campaign, that he didn't just win the swing states that he needed to win. He did something more than that. He also turned Pennsylvania, which was polling strongly for Clinton beforehand. I believe Pennsylvania was polling at 6.8% higher for Clinton. He's pulled that back. He's turned it Republican. And Michigan, which currently is still being counted, the votes are still being counted as we speak. She polled at 10% higher than him when we last talked about this. And he somehow managed to claw it back to the point where it's taking over 24 hours for an electronic system to decide who won that vote.
So what does that mean? Does that mean people are saying in the polls that they're going to vote for Hillary and then they're not voting?
Or they're just, when they're polling people, they seem to get more Democrats. Again, we talked about this. It is the quiet conservatism. The shy Tory. It's interesting because and it goes back to the media thing. If the media is constantly saying Trump's a racist, Trump's this, Trump's that,
why would you want to associate yourself?
Why
with
in
that?
the world would you want to be like, no, I am a Trump supporter. Yes, I am by proxy a racist and a bigot. Yeah,
the media is effectively creating almost a virtual reality by shaming these people, and what they need to do is they need to return to the centre ground and remain neutral in order to get an accurate and reflective view of what people think. If you start demonising great swathes of the population by saying they're a racist, saying they're a bigot, saying whatever, just because they support someone, you can't generalise and say because you're voting for Donald Trump you're automatically a racist or a bigot. That it's just going to make people shut up, basically.
I have to say, but I mean, already today, I think even though Trump has won, I think even that the media is still trying to cling to the way they were before. Because I mean, both me and Sam in front of us, we have a copy of the Telegraph. Now I'm going to apologise to listeners for the noise you're about to hear. Okay, that wasn't too bad. But if you page 3, you've got William Hague. Is that Defence Sec? No, that's Robert Fallon.
He was
Hague was Foreign Sec, wasn't
yes,
he?
He was Was he Foreign Sec or Defence Sec?
It was both.
No, he served many roles in the.
Yeah.
He was the leader for a bit, wasn't he?
He's already going. There's a serious risk that his rejection of trade agreements, new and old, will depress the fortunes of those very same people. It is going to create disillusionment and anger this time with him. That the senators have been uninfused by his plan to build a wall, and that he's not going to get support. I mean, they've also got. It's hoped he can listen carefully to allied leaders. So.
Can I just make a point on the wall thing, because everybody treats this as like it's unheard of and it's never been said before. Well, if I take you back to 2006, under George Bush, he signed or passed through Congress and the Senate something called the Secure Fence Act. And with it, in 2006, they spent about $3 billion, I believe, on 700 miles of fencing along the American and Mexican border. And then 2 years later, they added another 700 miles worth of fencing. And the US border with Mexico itself is only at 1,989 miles long. So in effect, he covered 2/3 of that already. So is it really that radical of a policy?
So, I mean, well, the point I was going to make was just like with the paper, even though they know Trump's won, and obviously the Telegraph being an American paper, you think, oh, let's try and get his favour. But they're also trying to find a legitimate icon to still criticise the man. And I'm just curious how much longer that's going to go on before it starts hitting them.
I think it's interesting, and there's sort of two different points there. But I just to go back to the wall, I think while you talk about the fencing, I think if Trump had been vague and said we need tighter border controls, I don't think many people would have argued. I think that's probably a very popular thing. However, it's how specific. We're going to build a wall. It's going to be, I don't know how high it was. I think it was 20 feet.
I think it was 30 or something.
30
like
feet
that.
high, you know, and also we're going to get the Mexicans to pay for it. It's very vitriolic, very rhetoric heavy.
Agreed. It's just, I think the sentiment of putting up walls or putting, border control, for example, is not as radical as people make it out to be.
Border control isn't, and again, to bring it back to Britain, I think we have constructed a wall in Calais, have we not?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's not an unheard of thing, but it's just how vitriolic and how passionate it's going to be.
Yeah.
A massive wall.
Yeah.
I think that's more what people are sort of fighting against.
Should we let Halliday jump in here?
Yes.
On
Sorry.
the point of the wall, I mean, even if he was able to, get that done, it wouldn't really work, because most of the people who are, illegal immigrants come there on a visa and then just stay there. Or if they do cross the border illegally, it's through underground tunnels. And and also going back to the media thing, I think with regards to the bias towards Hillary, that also cemented in a lot of Trump supporters' mind the fact that, the system is rigged, the establishment is against us, and I think that's what I wanted.
I find that amusing that even just before the election, Trump was saying it's rigged. The minute he wins, it's like, well, maybe it's not rigged. maybe it's not rigged.
Master of backtracking.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't all biased, because a lot of what they did was also just repeating what he said.
It wasn't hard to spin Trump.
It wasn't hard to spin. I watched a lot of CNN, which is a very pro-Clinton TV channel and news report, and I was astounded at how they reacted to the results yesterday. They almost went into meltdown on air, which I can understand. Emotions are high, and I can understand that people didn't want this outcome, but you've got to maintain some form of decorum and professionalism. You can't just... It sets a bad precedent, doesn't it, when the people who are supposed to be professional reporters start having effectively hissy fits on air.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I think it's somewhat justified, because there's so much at stake right now with like Obamacare and immigrants, women's health issues, LGBT. I mean, I think it's justified in a way.
Well, I mean, going with that, I'll say to move off the media for a second. Should we actually have a talk about some of his policies that he's planning to implement?
Well, before we talk about that, I just want to make, because I think you made a very good point there. It's also very interesting. You was mentioning about how Congress and Obama very much butted heads, and it did stall Obama in a lot of ways. Let's remember, there wasn't just the president's election. They actually had the election for Congress
And the Senate.
and the Senate.
And legalising marijuana.
Well, that's a separate issue, but the Republicans have held it. So right now, Trump has the presidency. He's a Republican. They have the House. Not only that is probably the most interesting thing that hasn't really been talked about a lot, is that there's a lot of old Supreme Justices, and
and now he's going to get to appoint them.
and he's going.
There's up to
Obama-
3 Supreme.
Yeah, well, there's definitely one, because what was it? Justice? Oh, how'd you say his name? Skate. Yeah, however you say his name. But he died, and so now Trump he's possibly got 2 or 3 justice picks, and that
because the problem is even if Obama goes to nominate, there's no way that the Senate's going to confirm them. The Senate's just going to go, we'll look into confirming them, we'll look into it, and then come January, Trump's in power, and they go, oh no, we're not going to confirm him, and then Trump's going to push someone through, because sadly there's only so much of Obama. He's going to go all out. He's going to do everything he can. He's going to sign hundreds upon hundreds of executive orders. I will put money on that. He's probably going to pardon Clinton, if well, not that he needs to, he's probably going to preempt some kind of pardon just in case. But I mean, the FBI has cleared her twice, so I don't know what Trump's actually going to do to put her in prison if he's still planning on that.
He's just done a thing with Planned Parenthood where now they're permanently funded that you can't take away from them.
And I reckon Obama's, in these last month or two, he's going to go all out, because now the Democrats, they literally have nothing left to lose.
It's interesting if Trump and the Republican, I think, because after Paul Ryan, I think it was Paul Ryan, he's the head of the Republicans.
Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House. He was very positive after, saying that they're going to try and work together and such. If Trump can work with the Republicans in the Senate, he's got a lot of power, and as you say, he can get rid of stuff like Obamacare, stuff like Planned Parenthood. Unlike he's probably in a very stronger position than definitely Obama was.
Well, I mean, one thing I'm is actually piquing my interest is obviously the climate change. You know, Trump said that's a myth; it doesn't actually happen, and that he's not going to go ahead with anything. But the Paris Treaty has now been ratified. The US cannot pull out of that for another 3 years until now it's been ratified. It's been ratified by Congress, and that, so 3 years they are held to that. Do you think Trump will actually go with that, or do you reckon he'll just ignore it?
I think it would be very bad for him if he did an about turn on that. I think that yes, he seems to have almost unlimited power now that the Republicans have the presidency, the Senate, and Congress. But there are some things that he will not be able to do, and I think turning around on a ratified treaty is one of those things. It's just, he could potentially ruin Obama's legacy if he wanted to. This really could be the undoing of everything that Obama has done.
He's going to have to pick his battles, is kind of the thing. Also, let's remember, he has to worry about the press. He has to worry about what the perception of is. There's a lot of people in that country who do not like Trump. So yeah, he's going to have to pick his battles. He's going to have to pick. Like I heard some people concerned that he might try to repeal Roe versus Wade and stuff like that. And I'm skeptical of that, because I just think that when something is ratified, I think it's very bad looking to try and overturn it.
I think that the Republicans are going to have to keep him in check, because now that they have the majority in all of these places, I don't think they've had it since 1928, Senate, Congress, and President, and they're going to want to keep that majority, so they are going to have to keep some of his rhetoric and policies in check. Yeah.
Because I know that was one hope that people were coming out with, and I think I'm guilty of saying it many a time, saying, well, even if he wins, the chances of them getting the majority in all three places are slim, so there'll be someone to hold him in check. And I was saying, the American system, it is robust, so you can't realistically have a rogue president. And like I said, I thought we were going to remain, and slapped in the face again by the polls.
The problem with that, though, is that he tends to, I was saying, surround himself with people who agree with him rather than people who are very professional and know what they're doing.
Well, one interesting thing in the Telegraph, it was saying that will Trump have access to the expertise that he needs to lead? Because yes, there are a lot of Republicans in the party that will have the knowledge, but will they still willingly help him after they walked away from him and they condemned him publicly? Will he even have them, let alone them offering their help?
I think they're intelligent enough to realise that it's better for them to help him than to walk away and let a loose cannon on the presidency.
Yeah.
They need to be there to guide him. I mean, the man has not held a political position before, which is...
Or a militaristic one?
Yes, he's the first president to have neither background.
Yeah.
So, of course, he's going to need them to kind of pool their resources and go forward. If it's all right with you three, I want to get into some exit poll analysis.
Yep.
Because I think it's incredible. I said last time, is Clinton Teflon coated? By which I mean, is any of this going to stick to her, or is it going to fall off like it seems to have with Trump? And I feel slightly vindicated that even after everything that he said about women, about ethnic minorities, about Latinos, he still managed to get 1 in 3 Latinos to vote for him, which is staggering.
More than Mitt Romney did.
Yep. And he also got 42% of women to vote for him, so almost 1 in 2 women cast a vote for Donald Trump. It's astounding how he's broken every rule in the political book and still managed to get to the White House. It's incredible.
The women thing interests me, and perhaps you'd have some insight into this. because the women thing, one of the big ones was that he was a sexist, and to be honest, it was the one that stuck to him the most. Is that the things he said, the locker room talk, as we called it,
Things that he potentially did too.
maybe
to use one of Hillary's quotes, rather, the stuff he said was deplorable.
Yeah, and
deplorable.
it absolutely wasn't. And the interesting thing about it is, even despite all that, Hillary Clinton, and let's be honest, Hillary Clinton used the fact that she was a woman a lot during the campaign. The first woman president, she hammered that home. I'm with her, And I wonder, it's almost a question. Why do you think Hillary Clinton just didn't appeal? She obviously got more of the vote, but why didn't she get a lot more of the vote? You would have expected it to be a lot.
I don't know. I think the kind of suspicion and like it kind of started around the Bernie campaign, with the establishment, Wall Street, emails, Benghazi, and then just from there, then Bernie losing, she was just
Bernie losing and then it coming out that the DNC rigged it.
Yeah,
that looked bad. And
because Halliday, you were telling me the other day that you think if Bernie was in it, he won it. Do you think the DNC are now slapping themselves because of that?
Yeah. I mean, he definitely would have, and I hope they learn from that and maybe not put up such an unlikable candidate.
I think
during such a
I think Hillary lost in essence because America is annoyed. That it's clear that they're annoyed. There's something going wrong, and to my mind, all these statistics that we've got in front of us, and we'll explain to you later, point towards a disenfranchisement with these globalist policies that they've been pursuing for the past 50, 60 years. Because as Trump said, he's quoted as saying, they used to make cars in, I believe, Flint, and the water you never used to be able to drink the water in Mexico. Now they make cars in Mexico, but you can't drink the water in Flint, which I think is summing up the fact that through these globalization trade deals, the American people have been undercut in terms of their salaries by countries that are developing economically, who aren't as progressed, who don't command or demand rather as high of a wage in order to do the same job. And that's led to basically business and the engine room of the American economy becoming almost crippled, almost beyond repair. There's such a thing now stretching through places like Pennsylvania called the Rust Belt, where all these industries that previously had been the heart of America and the driving force of the American dream have just disappeared. And I think the fact that Clinton has been in government for 30 years and that she represents a continuation, as I say, of the establishment that has been in place, either through Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, they've all pursued the same thing. I think America chose the candidate to help bring back this business for their kids, for the next generation. So at least they've got a hope. Because otherwise it's just going to keep going to Mexico, it's going to keep going to China, it's going to keep going to places like Malaysia that are all booming economically because of this, because of the exodus, shall we say, of businesses and trade and industry from America, from the West, from places that are economically developed like Europe to the LEDCs.
No, absolutely, I absolutely agree, and it's interesting that with the two big things this year, with the Trump election and with Brexit, what has happened is effectively the establishment has asked the people to vote for more of the same. And you look at these areas, both in rural England and Rust Belt America, these places that have been hit hard.
Yes.
Especially, I would say. This may not be true, but I think Trump would have had a harder time with the 2008 recession.
Oh, definitely he would have.
Yeah, because that hurt a lot of people, both in Britain and America, and of course across the world. And it's stirred up this very much this hatred, almost hatred of the establishment, and these people haven't done anything.
It's a rejection. It's a flat out rejection.
And if you watch the debates when Trump was at his strongest, and he wasn't good at the debates, obviously, but
because you'd be in jail.
Yeah,
Wrong.
But when he looked
China.
when he looked at Hillary and said, you have done nothing these past 30 years. That is when he was the strongest, and when he
And
So-
I mean, I think going back to Bernie, I mean, he ignited such an excitement, especially among young people, that there is an alternative. You know, we can have tuition-free university. We can have universal healthcare.
So do you think Bernie, if it had been Bernie versus
yeah.
Trump, do you think he would have won?
I mean, in terms of like likability and polling and ratings and stuff like that, he was, you know, above in the double digits
Yeah.
compared to Trump.
I have to
rather
agree
than
with
Hillary.
Halide, because basically they were both preaching or coming at the same point, but they were going at, by this I mean Trump and Bernie Sanders, they were both getting at the same problem, but they were coming at it from very different perspectives. So it's, I mean, he's come out, hasn't he, Bernie, and he said he'd be willing to work with Trump, which is almost, well, to my mind, I don't know, as a British person, I haven't followed previous governments, but to my mind, it's almost unheard of that a Democrat would offer their services to a Republican president.
I think there's a lot of concessions going around. I mean, I don't know if you heard Hillary's concession speech, and it was very much, we've got to give Trump a chance, and there's a lot of that. Obama was the same. There's a lot of, you know, at the moment anyway, we'll see what happens with Trump, but right
Even
now,
Huffington Post.
yeah, even yeah, you know, there's a lot of that at the moment.
So yeah, we've discussed.
A lot.
Yeah.
Also-
we've covered a lot.
Go.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The people who voted Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, I think a lot of them were also Bernie supporters. And if they had voted for Hillary, she would have.
Do you? I mean, the thing is, though, I know I see tactical voting. People are saying if you don't vote for Clinton, you vote. You know, if you even if you don't vote for Clinton, you don't vote for Trump, you're still voting for Trump. I mean, do we actually think we should be subscribing to tactical voting? The fact you have to vote for the lesser of two evils, or the candidate you don't want. Should you actually be blamed for voting for Gary Smith or Jill Stein because that got Trump in?
I don't think so. I think it's, you know, I understand that there is tactical voting. I understand that, but I think effectively to have a democracy, we have to be able to vote our conscience. And
Yeah.
if you genuinely don't like either candidate, it's wrong. I think it's the wrong mindset to go in and say, look, I don't like Hillary Clinton, but I'm voting for her because of Trump. You know, if you think that Jill Stein or Gary Johnson are better candidates, then they should be the ones who get your vote.
Definitely.
I think 11,000 people voted for Harambe as well.
That is incredible. That is amazing.
I want to also point out that an American Arsenal fan voted for Arsene Wenger and justified it as he's been in office for 20 years. He's always been under budget. And
Hey.
so yeah, they've got a sense of humour. I
So
can
more
give them
zingers like that in the sports podcast.
that. Yes, more. I just think that, bearing in mind the voter breakdown, and obviously Clinton did much better with younger people.
Well,
and-
I'm just thinking, should we get a PDF? We'll make a PDF version of the sheet we have in front of us available
yeah,
for
sure,
you all.
sure. A lot of it's, well, most of it is from CNN because I wanted to use a pro-Clinton website, so there'd be less debate about the statistics and more acceptance and whatnot. But I mean, the most remarkable one for me is the income statistics, because you would think that the people who earned more money would be less inclined to vote for Trump and more inclined to vote for Clinton as a continuation of what's going on already. But as we can see here, the only people that voted in favour of Clinton were people who were on salaries, making up 17% of the electorate, on salaries under $30,000 per annum. Everybody else above $30,000 voted for Trump.
Because he's in their best interests, isn't he?
Well,
But surely Clinton would be, because if they've made like $250,000 a year under the Obama administration, etc., she'd be a continuation of those policies. So to me, it doesn't make sense that they'd vote
But I
for
mean,
Trump.
in terms of like tax cuts and stuff for the wealthy,
most rich people do tend to vote Republican, and
Yeah.
you know, and and again, Trump is a businessman, and he is
Yep.
one of them, and he said it during his campaign. He wasn't shy about saying that. Yeah, I am a businessman, and I have used these loopholes, and you know, and whether or not we think about that, like again, he didn't publish his tax returns, did he? So
no, he didn't.
we can only imagine what was on them. But and I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that shocking, to be fair.
It did shock me, but I mean, it also, I mean, when did you decide to vote? Everybody apart from the before September, which admittedly is 60% of the electorate, they voted for Trump. Everybody before, you'll see this on the PDF. But yeah, last few days Trump, last week Trump, In October, Trump. In September, Trump. So it must have been people sitting at home really thinking about what they want. You know, I don't, or maybe it was a knee-jerk reaction, I don't know. Probably the last few days was a knee-jerk reaction. But it's not as clear-cut as people are making out. I don't think it's white people ruling the agenda, because, yes, the majority of his support and his voter base was white, but he got 1 in 3 Latinos to vote for him, even after saying that he wanted to send a lot of them back to Mexico. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. And going back to him not paying his taxes, that was, in terms of the responses of his supporters, that was very shocking, because one of the big, talking points of Republicans is, taxes. Immigrants, they don't pay taxes. We don't want to pay taxes for healthcare. We don't want to pay taxes for college. We don't want to.
It is amazing what did not stick on Trump. There were so many things, like the locker room talk, his tax returns. It seemed like he just managed to get past them. Whereas, and we look at the campaigns, I'm not surprised by the fact that more people later in the campaign decided to vote for Trump, because let's be honest, he had a better campaign. Hillary had a lot of bad things. She had a health scare. She had the FBI constantly on her. It wasn't a great campaign for Hillary.
I think the problem with Clinton was she used too many big words. And I was talking to you about this before.
America.
No, America. But the average literacy age in the UK is of a 12-year-old, right? So Trump, if you actually listen to him, he uses almost monosyllabic language, like, oh, the trade deals are bad, China's bad,
huge,
I'm great, I win,
it's
China,
gonna be a beautiful
that
wall.
kind of thing. We're going to build a wall, it's going to be, it's really almost basic language. But what's amazing about that is, yes, it makes him sound almost less intelligent, but he connects with a broader proportion of the electorate, because they understand him. He's not talking about, inflation rates and things that people, unless you have an interest in politics, you don't understand. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why he connected so well with people.
It's good campaigning, and just take it to its root. Just look at this slogan. Do we remember Hillary's slogan? Did she have a
Stronger Together?
Stronger Together, the same one the Remain campaign used.
It was a big one.
Quite unlike it. But
Parity.
But Make America Great Again. It's powerful. It's very much like
much like Ronald Reagan.
It's very coded language.
It's very South Park.
It's big. It's powerful. It's like Take Back Control with the Brexit campaign.
Yes,
you can remember it. It sticks in your head, even if we disagree with it. No one in this room's ever going to forget Make America Great.
But exactly, he used very direct, very blunt, and very emotive language. Like he used to say on his rallies, he said, "Oh, all of our politicians are stupid. The people in Washington are stupid." That kind of thing. You wouldn't hear that normally, would you? You'd say they're incompetent.
Anti-political correctness as well. He was blunt.
Exactly. It's a rejection of political correctness, and I think that has been brewing for a very long time.
He was blunt, but most of the things he said weren't factual at all. So I mean,
but
does that?
Facts don't matter. If the average person is not going to check these things, they're going to see it on the telly. They're going to see Trump.
This is why the news is so influential.
He's going to stand there. He's going to say, "Make America Great Again," and they're going to go, "Yeah, absolutely."
I mean, that's interesting to ask Trump supporters as well. Like, what era are they talking about? When they say again, and they usually answer like something like 50s, and I think that's very telling.
Oh dear. No, I mean it's such an interesting point in his. It's a pivotal. I view this as a watershed moment in world politics, not just US politics, because this is going to, as you said at the beginning of the podcast, his anti-trade deal stance is going to potentially affect China. It's potentially going to affect India, Mexico. Mexico is already in trouble. Their peso's falling. It's fallen by something like 18% in a day, which is ridiculous. It's as I said to begin with Brexit, it's probably going to help us, because he's not going to sign up to a trade deal with the EU. Yeah, they're probably going to be really worried.
Because he wants to take away that TTP, doesn't he?
Yes, he wants to get rid of these things.
NAFTA,
in order to, as I was saying, bring business back to the US and focus more on his people rather than trade deals that seem, in the long term, to be more beneficial to their partners than the people who are actually living in the country.
Then, but an interesting analogy to use, and it's a very true one. You should look after yourself first, because on an aeroplane, if something goes wrong, those oxygen masks drop. The one thing they tell you is you put yours on before you help anyone else. Because if you don't put yours on, you're not going to be able to help anyone. So surely the truth should be the same with your countries, your economies. You should make sure your country is the best place it can be for the people within that before you go around the globe helping everyone else.
I think, yeah,
But
it's
you're still
interesting. Well, because just to continue, but to continue on your point, one of the things he said was about NATO and about the fact that he doesn't think these countries are pulling their weight. And let's be honest, they might not be. They're not.
Well, no,
you know.
I've always said that if Russia decided, screw it, we're going to invade again, NATO will only care about what is east of the West German
Yes.
border.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything east of Germany, we couldn't care less. We couldn't defend it, so we're not going
Well,
to try and
Crimea?
defend it.
They walked in, they took it, and no one.
He's put nukes on like the border of Poland because obviously I forget the name of it, but it's got that tiny little bit of land by the Baltic for the freshwater fleet, and he's put nukes there just to rattle the cages of NATO.
I don't think it is America's job to police the world.
No.
It
I
isn't,
think
no.
everybody should pull their own weight.
I hope this is a wake-up call for especially Western, well, maybe other countries, but Western Europe countries like Britain and
definitely.
France and Germany. You know, these supposed powers like Britain and France have nukes. You know, and we're meant to be world powers to increase their defense spending.
Trump wants Japan to get their own nukes because
Yeah.
effectively they live off the American system,
Oh, of
even
course
though
they
they've
do,
got
yeah.
North
and
Korea
South
on
Korea.
South Korea, yeah.
and they've got North Korea on their border. You know, so they need to take their destiny into their own hands, really.
Yeah.
And in terms of climate change, we're at such a
Ooh.
crucial moment in history. I mean, it's going to be so important what he does in that next 4 years. And Obama introduced.
I don't think people are going to be hopeful about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obama introduced like the strictest policies in the United States history, and
I'm curious if he'll.
It's,
I'm curious if he'll keep to the Paris Agreement. You know, I'm curious if he'll.
He'll have to if they've
Well,
ratified it for the
they
next
have,
3
yeah.
years.
But I think that is one that he, you know, climate change is one that a lot of Americans don't believe in. You know, and it's just it's one
they
of
don't
those.
believe in evolution too. A
Yeah,
significant amount.
I think it was an interesting statistic during the campaign actually that more people in America believed in Bigfoot than they actually trusted Hillary. Do you know that sort of sums it up, doesn't it? But, yeah. America, but yeah, and it's interesting to see how he does with climate change because again, it's.
I'm going to float an idea on the globalism debate because that's going to be something that I think is going to define his presidency and potentially the next 4 years. I mean, the Chinese weren't happy. Obviously, there were reports that they were all stood around kind of staring at each other in absolute disbelief that Trump had been elected.
Same.
But I think if in a very rudimentary understanding of how these things work, I think the issue with globalism is they tried to be too all-encompassing, by which I mean, like the EU, the fall of the EU was adopting this currency for 27 different economies, 27 different strengths, and none of them could change the inflation rate to adjust to themselves. If they'd have kept the EU with similar strength economies, similar builds, it would have been fine. Quite like with these trade deals, the issue that's arisen, I'm all tongue-tied today, to my mind, is that they've done deals with economies that can and they have the ability to undercut the American market without actually benefiting the Americans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There would be like a vacuum effect. So, to my mind, what they should do is they should focus on trade with MEDCs, more economically developed countries, like Germany, like the UK, like Canada, like Australia, because then there's less chance of that undermining of the salary.
Because obviously we're at equal levels, and I'm imagining. You mentioned with Brexit. 'Cause I know one of his comments is going to be Brexit plus.
Thank you, Farage.
But
Yeah,
I mean because we're going through Brexit, and I mean the Telegraph have been saying, everyone's been saying it, that we've got to hope that him and Theresa May will work closely together. And my God, I tell you what, I reckon that they will, because if he trades, he wants it to be with a country like us, like Germany, or Canada, that aren't going to steal their manufacturing jobs, but are just going to help increase the sectors with each other. I mean, I imagine deals like that, BAE, companies like that with America, they're going to hugely expand.
I think the best thing we can do now is start building trade zones, free trade zones, with countries like America, like the US, like Canada, like Australia, like South Korea. They're fairly economically
because
developed.
imagine if we,
in
when
order
we-
to get
yeah.
a group of like countries to benefit each other.
Yeah, because if you had America, UK, Australia, Canada, between those, Australia, one of the biggest providers of natural resources on the planet, because if they're in a trade deal with us in America, they might just go, actually, we don't need China anymore. Because they can't go directly to us because we're tied up with the EU. So to go to us, they'd have to negotiate with only the EU, and most of the EU don't care. Obviously, they couldn't really go to America because of China. But now they might be able to come to us too and Canada in the next few years, and actually, as a group, we can make a trade zone that's bigger than ever. And obviously, I know Trump doesn't like trade deals, but he's
if you
probably
pitch
going
it to him like that, he might.
Yeah. I'm sure he's going to listen, and I'm sure if he listens, the American public will listen. Now, I'm not saying the Americans are mindless sheep, but
Sheeple.
I'm guessing you do heed the words of your president at times.
Not if he's Trump.
I mean, I tell you, if for Trump's first 100 days, are you actually going to think of yourself to be going within a cynical disposition, or are you going to be open-minded about it?
I mean, I'm not optimistic, but I hope that he does well as a president. I mean, it would be kind of counterintuitive, even though I don't like him at all. But I just hope that the people around him will be able to, keep
Well,
him
there's
in check.
already been protests. There's already been.
But that's wrong, you see.
Yeah,
because
that annoys me.
there's a fun. One, democracy has taken place. It's happened. You've had your vote. That's it. It's not best out of 3. Because then I could say, well, best out of 5, and then we could go best out of 7, and we just go from election to election and election, and nothing would ever get done. To my mind, they shouldn't be rioting. Okay, protest, whatever, but they shouldn't be rioting.
That's so fundamentally American, though.
It's just, I think you can't have such a dogmatic view of what's happened. Like we've discussed here, it's not that they're all racists.
No.
It's not that they're all bigots. There's something fundamentally wrong with America, and to label them all as such, racist, bigots, whatever, then you shut down the argument. And if you shut down the argument, there's no way of solving the problems because you can't hear.
But I mean, I think you're saying that in a very rational perspective as a UK citizen who doesn't live in the US and who's not really going to be affected firsthand by a lot of these issues that people are scared about in terms of.
But
like,
then we've got our saying.
It's the same thing over here. We've got a similar culture of if you don't agree with the consensus, you get shut down, and it's led us to where we are with the Brexit.
Well, look at how Brexit's
vote.
been. I think it's interesting. I understand. I slightly take a different view. I'm not. I think the protests are just, as you said, just gut wrenching anger. It's 5 stages of grief, perhaps. I think once people calm down and once we see what he does, it's going to calm down a bit, and then we'll actually see what happens. But it is the same with the Brexit vote. I voted for Brexit.
So did I.
And so did yourself. And there is a lot of anger about, the fact there is a lot of Remain. There was 100. Well, I think it was like 100,000 march for Europe. I don't know how many it was. But
Yeah, they're trying to block it in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, in the Supreme Court, and and we'll see what happens with that.
But I mean,
But is it fair to vote for it when no one knows exactly how it's going to happen,
Well,
what
they
it
should- they
entails?
shouldn't-
I mean,
they-
nobody knows.
But then
they
anything
shouldn't
about
put it
it.
in front of
with
us,
that
yeah.
logic, you should never ever have a vote ever. Because if we don't know what's going to happen, we can't vote on
Well,
it.
could they not have another vote once everything is made clear?
We're going
But
to have to.
we can't. We can't have another vote until everything is made clear,
Yeah.
because nothing will be made clear until we trigger Article 50.
Because
the EU has said they will not enter negotiations with us until we trigger Article 50.
But also we can't exactly have a full-on House of Commons debate with all the nation. You can't have constant referendums on every little bit of the trade deal we want. But equally, you can't put that to Parliament, put a white paper around Parliament saying, what do we want from that? Because can you win a game of poker if all of your cards are on the table for everyone to see? No, you have to keep your negotiating tactic for yourself. Now, I voted Remain. I believe Parliament needs to vote on this at some point because it needs to be ratified by a legal representing body of the UK government, but that needs to be done at the end. We don't need to vote to trigger Article 50. We had a referendum. Yes, the referendum's not legally binding, but the majority of the nation said we're going to leave. It doesn't matter if it's done through prerogative power or a vote. We need to activate Article 50.
When you say majority, what percent was it exactly?
It was
like
52 to 40. 52 to
I mean,
40, yeah. It's a majority. I know it's a. I know. I understand, but it is a majority, and the problem is that if the government should have planned for this, they shouldn't have put it in front of the British people if they didn't know what they were doing.
Anyway, obviously we're coming up to the hour mark now. We don't need to get bogged down in UK politics. No. I just want to ask. I'm going to go around and I'm going to ask you each 2 questions. Same 2. I'm just going to go around. I'm going to start, Sean. I'm going to start with you. Okay. So Trump, so how do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I sort of agree with what Dan said. I think I think he's going to be quiet for the first 100 days, perhaps. I don't think anything massive is gonna. He's not going to get into the White House and then suddenly everything's going to change. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of hyperbole going around. I think people are reacting very strongly, very angrily. I think it's a shock, and I think we do need time to sort of assess. I trust that America's not going to crumble. I trust that America's got their checks and balances in order, that it's not going to go down with the ship. I don't know. We'll have to see. And it's interesting, though, and I would say it's it's an interesting time.
I know, Sam, being the man with all the numbers, do you think that he's going to carry on this support for the next 4 years?
I think we have come to the end of a very bitter, a very divisive campaign that focused more on the pitfalls of the candidates than their policies. And I think that needs to be addressed, because I didn't hear much of policies from Clinton.
Well, one candidate didn't really have any policies,
exactly.
To be honest.
I didn't hear policies from Trump. So I think that needs to be the focal point first. I think in terms of his mandate, he is the president-elect. He will be the president come January. He's 70. I don't think he's going to be doing it on his own. I think he's going to have to delegate. But it's scary that he's got both Congress and the Senate behind him. But ultimately, I think the people have just got to ride the wave and see what happens. If he does something horribly wrong, he'll be impeached.
Now, Halliday, do you have, for America, do you actually have concerns for your country, or your society, or fears or hopes? How do you think this is actually going to affect you and America?
Yeah, I mean, just the thing with Trump is that he's so unexpected. He changes his mind every 5 seconds and then lies about it. So, I mean, like you said with the
wrong,
like you said with Congress and Senate, that's the really scary part. I mean, you have so many Republicans there who don't believe in a woman's right to abortion, who don't believe in gay marriage, who, healthcare, college, all of those things. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping that depending on that outcome, that people will maybe move more to the left after this election in the next 4 years. And hopefully Bernie's still alive. And
well, speaking of Bernie, that's going to bring me to my last question for all of you. Do you think in 4 years' time, the next election, whether it will be, do you reckon Trump will run again, or do you think the Republicans will remain in power? Sam?
I don't think Trump will run again, for the simple reason of he's going to be 74 when the next election comes around. He's already the oldest president in the U.S. history,
really?
In the history of the U.S.
Yeah.
Yes. So I highly doubt he's going to go for a second term. I think he's going to have 4 years. I think he's going to tutor and teach his running mate Mike Pence, and I think he's potentially going to be the candidate for the Republicans come the next election. I'm not sure. I'm taking a bit of a stab into the dark there, but I highly, highly, highly doubt that Trump is going to be president till he's 78.
Sean?
I could not tell you what. If there's one thing I think we should learn is that there is no way of expecting what Trump is going to do. I don't know the situation. I don't know how his first 4 years is going to go. I don't know if age is going to be a factor for him. What I'm more interested almost is what happens with the Democratic Party now. They have been completely, like, they have really messed up this election, and to see what direction they go, whether or not they have those parallels with the Labour Party, they go left wing, they get their own version of Jeremy Corbyn, which, granted, Bernie Sanders is getting on it himself, but if there is this shift to the left, or if they try to follow Donald Trump and try to appeal more to that working class, so they maybe shift to the right. I don't know. I think it's really early to tell what Trump's going to do. We have to see what he does in those first 4 years as to whether or not.
Halide, your 4-year prediction.
I don't know. I think it's going to be easy for him to reverse a lot of things Obama has done, because he did a lot of those things on executive order because he wasn't able to pass them through Congress. So I honestly have no idea.
Well, I think that's going to be my answer, because I think if the past year of politics have taught us anything, from the 2015 general election to the referendum to this election,
it's listen to Sam.
You did call it, and I didn't take you seriously.
It's that now everything is in turmoil. We can't predict anything. We just take it one day as we go. But I think in the end, everything will work out. Everything will be all right.
The sun will rise in the morning.
Everything will be all right, and if it's not all right, it's not the end. And I'm going to end us on that note. If everyone wants to say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.
And I'll thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week in our next podcast. Thank you. Goodbye.